Sega.
Ready for takeoff.
Sky Target is a quasi-sequel to Afterburner, playing similarly to that classic but without the throttle control. It's the basic story of the American Air Force having their new top-secret jet fighter stolen by a test pilot and taken to the evil Deldine Corporation. This then sees a small dedicated force of 4 different planes having to wade through enemy terrain, taking out everything in their way in order to destroy the stolen plane. There's actually a lot of story and lore behind this game, despite it ostensibly being a somewhat basic into-the-screen shoot-'em-up. First we'll look at the arcade version from 1995, running on Sega's Model 2A CRX hardware. For this I'll use the Sega Model 2 emulator. Then we'll compare it to the rare Japanese-only PC port from 1997 to see how that version fared. The arcade game released in a couple of cabinets, the standard seated unit and the deluxe with a large projection screen. Both are essentially similar, but the standard unit takes up less room in an arcade. The game begins with a rolling intro sequence showing the 4 planes you can use in the game taking off. These are the F-14D Super Tomcat, as seen in Top Gun as well as the original Afterburner, the F-15S/MTD, which was essentially an upgraded test aircraft, the F-16C Fighting Falcon, and the French Rafale M, a bit of a left-field final choice, as it was the French-developed alternative to the Eurofighter. The title screen then appears. This is followed by some gameplay of one of the jets, showing how it plays. There's then a more extensive look at each plane. Here you can see the Tomcat, before the high score table is shown. Then comes the mission briefing.
The XF-A-49 fighter, possessing unsurpassed firepower and seek and destroy capabilities, has been stolen. You must destroy it before it falls into the hands of another country. Repeat, you must destroy it.
Spooky voiceover. And there's the ultimate target. The intro then loops with some in-game footage of the F-15S/MTD taking on an end-of-stage boss, before its close-up. On the next loop it's the F-16C's chance at some gameplay, and its close-up. Amusingly, despite the game's storyline saying that a team of unmarked planes will be used, this one is painted up as part of the Thunderbirds display team. In the final playthrough, the Rafale M takes on the same end-of-stage boss before seeing it on the aircraft carrier. It was a plane that could be launched from an aircraft carrier, so it's possibly why it made the cut in this game. When you start the game, you can choose from the 4 fighters available. For me, it has to be the Tomcat to keep that Afterburner feeling. The first stage sees you launch off an aircraft carrier, Afterburner style, attacking waves of enemy aircraft and ships. Unlike Afterburner, there are 2 viewpoints in this game. This initial one is similar to Afterburner with the screen tilting as you move, although you cannot do full barrel rolls. There's also this pulled back view where the horizon remains level and your plane whizzes about the screen instead. This is a bit more like Space Harrier or Panzer Dragoon, but overall I prefer the closer view as it's a bit more dramatic to play from. You also have a health bar now where you can take several hits before you explode, but as mentioned before, there's no throttle or speed control in this game, no afterburners. After a short while you encounter the first massive boss, Halbert. This scene plays out to some astonishing music of a Japanese singer screaming. You basically have to destroy the 4 engines on the huge plane, which doesn't take that long. You then get to watch it go down, whilst you get your score breakdown. Next up is...
You're not bad, but you haven't tasted real warfare yet. Hang in.
Nice acting. It's off into the clouds where we can see Deldine have their own stealth fighters and even SR-71 Blackbirds, but everything gets blasted. There's some nice bits going through clouds here, before you take out some golden B-2 stealth bombers. For a military corporation, Deldine definitely have access to a lot of hardware dating from the 1950s onwards. Eventually I lose a life, and you can see how the branching stages in the game are laid out. Let's continue. The end of stage boss is this huge flying wing called Tal War. This one you have to take out the large missile launchers on each wing before it explodes and folds up as it falls through the clouds to its doom. Next you get to choose where to go. We'll go to the jungle. Immediately we're being attacked by ground-based emplacements, so it's a bit hectic. Eventually the stage opens up above a lake, and the massive airship Flamberge appears. There's some nice wibbly water effects on the lake below. This boss feels like something from Panzer Dragoon, and you have to target the engines at the back before it explodes, and you can see how bad the scenery level of detail is in the distance. This next stage is rather unique and my favourite. You plunge down to intercept a ballistic missile with some Japanese crooning going on in the background. After ploughing an unfeasibly long way down, you eventually meet the Scepter missile and start flying after it. First you have to blast all the rocket stages away, before you do battle with the guns on the top part of the rocket. I didn't realise I had to use guns to shoot it, so the rocket escaped. Whoops. It's on into a canyon next with a mixture of helicopters that can fly backwards as fast as your jet, along with numerous laser cannons and guns on the ground to avoid. You take out a train mid-stage too. Eventually the end of stage boss, the hard to pronounce Hrathnir, rolls into view. This kind of reminds me of the entire second stage and boss in Thunderblade. You simply have to hit the back of the tank, and then its raised rocket launcher legs, and it'll eventually turn over in a very weird looking manner. We'll head to the city next. There are 2 city stages in this game, and both feature a reworked, somewhat less catchy version of a tune from Afterburner. There's plenty of stuff that distracts you as you try to take out the enemy planes, airships and boats. Eventually, after a few continues, I get to the Vajra 2 helicopter. On this one, the main things to take out are the engines and the barrel-throwing doors on the side. I think the yellow flashes on the propeller here are an emulator bug though, as I'm using trilinear filtering in this game to make it look more arcade accurate. Unfortunately, the helicopter escaped.
We survived this far somehow. If we're lucky, we'll stay together.
Yeah, let's stay together, as they promptly fly off and disappear. This final stage takes place initially through an enemy fortress, with various bridges and cannons to avoid and destroy. It's not long though before Brigadine comes onto the scene, and some suitably oppressive music. This appears to be a Marvel-style helicarrier. The 4 propellers don't take long to take out though. And then we see the stolen XF-A-49 White Sword plane taking off from the doomed helicarrier. This is the final battle. For some reason it can call down satellite laser support, which gets hairy for a few seconds, and at least one continue. But keep chucking everything you have at the warplane when it bothers to come into view, and eventually you destroy it. And that's pretty much the whole game, on the paths I chose at least. The congratulations scene sees your plane return to base, where the other planes bother to turn up again. You then get to enter your name, but this part of the emulation is a bit bugged, with this blue panel hiding things. After this you see your initials on the plane wing, and it runs down the top 10. Again, the emulation here is a bit off, with the names only appearing at the last minute, with a black bar at the end of them. In short though, I'm number 1 on the high scoreboard. Woo! And that's it. Here's a minute of this game without me talking over it. The PC port of the game was handled by Appaloosa Interactive, formerly known as Novatrade International. They've been involved with a number of Sega games, most notably Echo the Dolphin. This PC version only released in Japan. The box and disc you see here are my own copy that I imported from India randomly, many years ago, at great expense. Interestingly, the box is entirely in English, so I'm not sure why this didn't receive a wider release. When you start the game, you get a Sega logo, then the opening sequence, which relies on pre-rendered video. It appears to display only in 256 colours, which is a surprise as I set the game to 16-bit colour, and the original video, should you run it from the CD-ROM as a video file, looks much better than it does in-game. I did wonder if this was the arcade original version screen captured, but it has several differences, so is essentially bespoke to the home ports. A short demo of the F14D follows. Again, in-game graphics appear to be 256 colours, which is a disappointment with no direct 3D support. The high scores then show, and the title screen follows. You then get the storyline.
The XF-A49 fighter, possessing unsurpassed firepower and seek and destroy capabilities, has been stolen. You must destroy it before it falls into the hands of another country. Repeat, you must destroy it.
At least you can read it in this version. Much like the arcade, the intro then repeats, focusing on each plane in turn. Here's the F-15S/MTD, and here it is taking on the Flying Wing boss. Next up is the F-16C fighting Falcon, and some gameplay footage. And the final loop looks at the Rafale M, before some gameplay of that in action. When you start the game, you can choose between arcade and ranking. The ranking mode allows you to choose a plane, then go through several missions in turn chasing a high score. But we're here for the arcade game. Once again, you can choose from the 4 planes, then see the takeoff via a video clip. As mentioned earlier, this game seems to run in just 256 colours. If you change from 16-bit to 256 colour mode, only the score and hit count look different. I'm not sure why the 16-bit mode was so badly nerfed on the PC version though. If you look at footage of the Sega Saturn version, despite it being lower resolution and much jerkier, it has more transparent items and even some fancy Guro shading on the planes. Eventually I get to the boss with the screaming vocals. Everything in this port has taken a polygon count hit, as you'll see later in the pixel comparison section of this video. Explosions are massive bitmaps too now, not 3D modelled. Even the pop-up pilot is just a still now. The cloud stages lack the large clouds to fly through, but otherwise all the enemy planes are present and correct here. The lower draw depth does see the ground scenery flashing in and out of existence though, which feels a bit bargain basement. The Flying Wing plays out as per the arcade, but I have to continue here. The PC version only gives you 3 credits to play. How far will I get? That's the boss done, and now onto the jungle stage to see how it's been handled here. There's a lot of scenery popping. It feels like mountains are constantly surprising you. As before, the ground-based cannon are a pain in the butt. And here's the flamberge. Notice that the fancy lake water effects are entirely missing here. It's a much more simplified appearance. After a second continue, I eventually take down the airship, and you can see how the distance scenery renders in this version. Now, onto the missile attack. There's no cloud layers in this version, just some small cloud sprites rushing by. All the enemy planes are flat bitmaps that just start flipping when shot, instead of exploding like the arcade. Overall, it's rather reduced in quality. The crazy music stands out more though. Let's see if we can take out the missile this time. It has less rockets than the arcade version, but otherwise is similar. Except I beat it this time. Phew. On into the canyon, and a lot of scenery popping. Bridges just appear from nowhere. Mountains pop up unexpectedly, and guns on the ground float in the air before the scenery appears around them. It's very messy. And here's Hrathnir. This one feels unfair, as if you get close to it, you take repeated hits until you take out the guns. Eventually though, I break the tank legs, and it rolls like the arcade, totally unconvincingly. Onto the city with just 50% health and no continues. How will this pan out, I wonder? Once again, there's a lot of pop-in on pretty much everything. It also feels less dark and night-like than the arcade version. But it's not long before the enemy forces wipe me out, and we're ejecting from a crashed plane. So, let's set the game to easy mode and see if we can get any further. On easy mode, I make it to the Vajra 2 at the end of the city. This time I know I have to target the barrel launching doors, so let's go all in on this guy. And it's not long until it's on its way down. Let's hope it doesn't land on anyone in the city. And so to the final level. There's no lightning on the intro sequence here though. As with other levels, it's a brighter experience than the arcade, and a bit more tricky with so much scenery popping in from nowhere. It's time to take on the final boss with just 10% health and no continues. I take out the helicarrier and the white sword launches. And promptly wipes me out with his satellite attack. That's enough of this one. Here's a minute of it in action. Let's compare both games at the pixel level. We start with a shot from the carrier launch scene. Here's the arcade version. Note the textures under the plane cockpit. Now let's wipe across to the PC version, which uses video for this scene. It's much more zoomed in with more detail under the cockpit. But the 256 colours look poor. However, if I wipe across to a still from the video on the CD-ROM itself, you can see it actually has much better colours. It's just the game that seems to be locked to 256 colour playback. Next up, here's the opening scene. I enabled trilinear filtering on the emulator, which makes the distant sea textures more blurry. If you compare this shot to the real-life arcade hardware, it's pretty much how it looks. I'm running the arcade set to deluxe hardware, which tones down the brightness a touch, or the distant clouds are very blown out and white. Note here the modelling on the islands in particular, with beaches for instance. Wiping to the PC port, you can see the islands are massively cut back, as is the lighting generally, with everything looking a lot flatter. Here's the pilot chat scene after the first stage on the arcade original. Note the plane detail and the background mountains. Wiping to the PC version, you can see the plane detail is reduced, and the background now shows the ground black rocks, which is a bit jarring. The pilot graphic is now 2D instead of 3D modelled. This is the city stage should you go right after the cloud stage instead of to the jungle. Look at how much detail there is on the skyscrapers, trees and other buildings on the ground, with red lights on the tall buildings, etc. Wiping to the PC port, there's a lot more going on, as the 4 jets flying towards you dispatch missiles, but here note the ground has no trees or small building details at all, and skyscrapers in the background are reduced to low resolution pixelated sprites until they get near enough and snap into 3D objects. Confusing looking and disappointing. Finally, here's a shot from the canyon. Note how you can see the grey gun emplacements in the distance, clearly located on the ground. Also note the detail texturing in the bottom of the canyon. Wiping to the PC port, you can see the ground is now just a pixelated mess, and the distant guns are now floating, as the ground they sit on hasn't appeared yet, but you need to be able to see them to target them, so they draw on screen first. It's a bit of a dog's dinner, to be honest. Let's put both versions head to head in several scenes so you can see how reduced the PC port really is. The arcade version is no classic, but it's fairly fun, and the massive bosses, crazy music and branching paths add a bit of replayability. The PC port is lumbered with lower colours, awful pop-in and some massively reduced assets, but it runs smoothly and contains all the same levels and content as the arcade, albeit much more simplified. It also adds the ranking mode, which is something extra to mess around with, I guess. Overall though, I prefer the arcade version. If you like this comparison of Sky Target, then give it a like, subscribe, ring the bell, etc. And join me next time for some crazy Sega fighting action.